It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down District 1 and 2 activities week in, week out in the great state of Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney, and we are joined by our North Idaho resident, Ryan Scaggs, rocking the Capri Sun today, looking good.
Holy cow, is that sweet? No, I was just trying to do it for the comedic factor. I always don't want to, like, you know how I roll in with drinking something. I figured I'd go a little off the wall today. So raiding the pantry and my kids' lunch to steal a Capri Sun that, wow, was that disgusting.
Yeah, that's like pure sugar, man. That's no good.
Yeah, that's definitely going to go in the trash. So
Do you remember the commercials from when we were kids? It would like be a kid like skateboarding, and he would drink the Capri Sun, and then he would just turn into like silver liquid, and then just like disappear.
Where's the other ones? I can't remember maybe it was the Fruit of the Loom commercials or something, where they turn into like their head would turn into a fruit, or it was the Gushers commercials. Yeah, yeah. No, that takes me back. Like I liked those as a kid, but wow, holy cow. Like I just need the orange slices now in my mom's minivan. So
right. I was gonna say I feel like one of those Capri Sun kids. I feel like I'm just like silver or liquid, and I'm just gonna melt away at any point because I'm obviously still under the weather a little bit. But we missed last week's show, Ryan, and we heard from the fans that they were pretty disappointed. And so, here I am. I don't really have a strong voice yet, but we're gonna navigate through because there's so much to talk about in terms of noteworthy performances. So I guess the same thing happened last year where semifinal weekend of state football, we didn't do a prepcast. And so I guess I just get sick every year at the semis.
I came to your defense, but at least I tried to. At least you did a nice job with the write-ups for the prep for the semifinal games. But yeah, I mean, you were doing what you could do with what you were dealt. And I mean, obviously being sick on the air is probably no fun for a prepcast. So
yeah, I will say it is very frustrating as somebody who talks professionally to not be able to. But on the other side, that has allowed me to channel more into writing, which I also enjoy quite a bit. And I have been writing nonstop girls basketball previews, which, by the way, if you didn't know, girls basketball season has started. And we have our previews up on the website, IdahoSports.com. We should have every single conference preview for girls basketball players to watch, quotes from the coaches. By the end of the week, we've got about 2/3 of them done so far. So check that out on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. And otherwise, I think the biggest story this week is not actually championship football, but a regional championship won by the Coeur d'Alene boys cross country team. They went to the Nike Northwest competition at Eagle Island Park down in southern Idaho and became the first boys team ever from Idaho to qualify for nationals.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment, and getting that championship down there at the regional meet is outstanding. I mean, it's one of the few sports that you get to see a high school team not only compete at the state level, but then they get to take it to a national level. We don't really get to see too much in other sports like football and some of the other sports, like go and compete against other states to see how they compare mano a mano, and to see the Vikes go down there and roll to a regional title and qualify for the state or the national meet that's an outstanding accomplishment. And historically, the Northwest has done very good at the national meet. So, I mean, that bodes well for a great showing nationally as well.
Yeah, they beat this big powerhouse from Oregon. Southern Oregon Distance Project basically has athletes from Crater High School in Oregon. They were the defending regional champs. Coeur d'Alene had 4 runners place in the top 30, which is just outstanding. So
yeah, that's the best of the best runners. I mean, like that's taking state champs from all the classifications from all the Northwest states. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Jacob King was the highest placer. He took 8th overall, which is just incredible. And so Marlo Herford had a great write-up about the Nike Northwest Regionals. And then, of course, she will follow the Coeur d'Alene boys as they travel to the Nike Nationals as well. So if you want to read more about that, you can go to the homepage at IdahoSports.com. But Coeur d'Alene boys are still undefeated on the season as well. And they won some big league meets, obviously the state competition and the District 1-2 competition here in Idaho, but they also went and won the Mountain West in Missoula, Montana that we talked about a couple months ago. They won the battle for the 509 in Washington. They won the Hole in the Wall invite in Washington, which is one of the premier Northwest running events. So keep it up, Coeur d'Alene boys. Good job.
No, absolutely. I mean, a lot to be proud of at Coeur d'Alene High School this week.
Yes, for sure. So, okay, let's talk about, state swimming happened 2 weeks ago, Ryan. Had we done a show last week, we would have highlighted all of the state swimming accomplishments. And so we'll do that here. We have to start with the Lake City girls winning their third consecutive 5A state championship. Didn't come without a bit of controversy. And I don't even think it was controversy. It was just a misunderstanding of the rules. Did you follow this at all?
Not really. I saw some rumblings on social media on X about it a little bit, and had a few people actually message me, and I'm like, man, I'm so illiterate when it comes to swimming. Like, you're asking the wrong guy. So fill me in, because I know that there was some controversy out there, but I couldn't get to the bottom of it, other than we'll talk about a 4A finish that really surprised me and was a really pleasant surprise in our region. But go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so 5A girls, Lake City and Timberline are neck and neck in the team race. We get to Saturday night. Timberline appears to have clinched the 5A championship. Francesca Hunt rallies from behind to win the final leg of the 400 freestyle relay. And so Timberline is celebrating. They think they've just won state or clinched the state title. Official comes over and says, actually, you guys broke a rule. There's a rule that says athletes, it's kind of like track and field, right? You can only compete in a certain number of events. And so at state swimming, you're limited to 4 events, and that is it. So what had happened was on Friday, Timberline had swapped out a couple of members of their relays so they could focus on prelim events for, their individual events. And I think Timberline misinterpreted the rule, saying basically 4 in one day, I think is what they thought, but it's actually 4 over both days of competition. And so what happened is they had 2 athletes that actually competed in more than 4 events. So those performances get disqualified, and they were on relays. So those relays get totally wiped out, totally disqualified. That allows Lake City to earn the title. And so congratulations, to the Lake City girls. Timberline essentially lost 64 points because of their disqualifications. So Timberline went from winning pretty comfortably to losing by 26 points to Lake City. Kind of a weird thing, but now everybody knows.
Yeah, I mean, and those rules are there for a reason, obviously. And you don't want to stretch them and see. You don't want to. When you get to the state level, you don't want to get to the point where you're having to ask for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. And that's just from the coach's standpoint. I mean, you look at it in wrestling too, like we caught, this was, like 7 years ago, we had a wrestler that had wrestled up 2 weight classes in a dual meet to accept a forfeit. And he comes into the regional or the district meet at a weight class too low than what he's gone. So he disqualified himself for the weight class he was trying to wrestle at, and then didn't weigh in at the next weight. So he couldn't bump because the brackets had already been set. And so he didn't even get a wrestle at districts, and he was a state placer the previous year. So we've seen stuff like that, but it's just like the semantics within the rules. As a coach, you got to understand, don't take away from the effort from Lake City. Getting 3 in a row, that's an insane feat. And, much to be talked about, and a huge accomplishment for those ladies up the street at Lake City High School. But, I think it was a decent showing for the North this year again in state swim. Obviously getting a state championship is a huge accomplishment, but there's some great efforts out there.
Yeah, Malin Sobek, triple winner for Lake City. She wins the 200 and the 500 freestyle events, and then she was also part of the winning 200 freestyle relay along with Sylvia Stroh, Trista Slife, and Quinn Taylor. And then Lake City's 200 medley relay team set a new state record with a time of 1:49:12, and that was Riley Taylor, Quinn Taylor, Demi Blaylock, and Pema Anane. So way to go, Lake City girls, setting a new record in the 200 medley relay also.
Yeah, no, great job.
It's awesome. Okay. 5A boys, Ryan, Lake City takes second place with 198 points. Coeur d'Alene finishes third. So 2 of the top 3 slots belong to North Idaho, but Boise High wins the boys competition. They're so dominant. They've won pretty much every swimming championship since it became a sanctioned sport. But we did have some individuals do well. Isaac Thorpe of Coeur d'Alene wins the 50 free. Eli Shaw of Lake City wins the 100 butterfly, and Elijah Brown of Lake City wins the 200 IM with a new state record time of 1 minute 55.32 seconds. So record set on the boys side as well from Elijah Brown of Lake City.
Yeah, no, great job by the gentleman there. And, that just says a lot about the clubs here in North Idaho, too, the off-season swimming that takes place and the dedication of these athletes. It's making waves, pun intended, in the pool. But, they're doing a great job at getting the athletes to turn out at an early age. And it's showing. I mean, I work out at the Croc Center, which is where the swimming teams all practice here in North Idaho. It's the only really large scale indoor swimming facility. But you see those kids in there and the amount of time that they spend in the pool working, and especially in the off season too. And it's paying dividends in a big way come state meet time.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's go to the 4A meet. There's only 5A and 4A. That's it. So so like Wallace, for example, has a swim team. They have to compete at 4A, and them's the breaks. But at the 4A level, Ryan, Sandpoint wins the girls' championship with 185 points. Congratulations, Bulldogs! I believe it's their second title in 3 years. I could be wrong on that. I'm still in a bit of a NyQuil haze here, so everything's a little blurry. But is this the result that you were pleasantly surprised by, or was it on the boys' side?
It was on the boys' side.
Okay,
yeah, but,
we'll get to it then.
But the girls winning a state championship, Sandpoint girls winning a title there in swimming, that's a huge accomplishment. I know they were close last year, and I think that they won the prior year to that. So I think you're correct. It was 2 out of 3, or it's 2 out of 4. But regardless, to finish the state title at the end of the year, that's a huge accomplishment there. And then on the 4A boys side, this one is the one that kind of shocked me a little bit, but I know how hard the coaches worked getting those kids to rally. But
yeah. So Sandpoint girls win the 4A title. On the boys' side, Lakeland takes second with 172 points, and I'm assuming that's what caught your eye. Yeah,
that's the one that caught my eye because it's historically not a powerhouse swimming program, and it shows you Coach Meyer, with that group, how hard he's worked getting those guys to buy in and work and taking them up there, because I don't even think they were in the top 10 last year, if I'm mistaken. I'll have to go back and check the results, but to come back this year and finish second on the podium, you want to win state, but to be runner up and kind of come out of nowhere to do it and just work your tail off, and it's effort that shows up. That's a hats off to that crew, and a great job by the Hawks.
Yeah, so Sandpoint girls win on the strength of numbers. They only had one championship, event, only one first place finish. That was in the 200 medley relay. Sarah Hogue, Mia Driggs, Riley Bamer, and Raina Montecchi took first in the 200 medley relay. And that was it. Otherwise, it was all, deep finishes, second, third, fourth, etc. And then really the individuals that shined at the 4A meet were the Momola siblings. Michael on the boys' side for Lakeland wins the 2 and the 500 free. And then McKenna Momola on the girls' side set 2 new state records, Ryan, from Lakeland in the 200 and the 500 free. So I would say the Momola family, and I'm assuming they're siblings, the Momola family kind of have the 200 freestyle and the 500 freestyle on lockdown.
Yeah, and you think about the competitions and family swim days or whatever at the beach, and you go to the lake or something like that, that's going to be a little bit of interesting pecking order between the family members there, between the two of them. But yeah, no, Lakeland, turning the tide with their swim team, I think is something of note to notice that, what they're able to do in the pool now. And like I've said, all these kids know each other too from all the high schools, because they practice in the same facility. And a lot of them in the same clubs too. So to see that effort, and you kind of do the overall, like you look at Kootenai County and how they finished, with all the schools, or even District 1 for that matter, throwing in Sandpoint too, with all the finishes. Far and away, I think is the most power powerhouse schools that we've seen. The top echelon of these swimmers have been coming out of District 1.
Yep. So congratulations to all of our swimmers that went over and represented themselves so well 2 weeks ago at state swimming in Boise. Okay, let's turn the page to football, Ryan. And before we talk about the teams that are still alive from the North, let's do a little post-mortem for the teams that have fallen since the quarterfinal round, since that was the last time we really were on the Prepcast. We were previewing the quarterfinals. And this is where, if I was slick enough, I would have that song by Sarah McLachlan, I Will Remember You. I'd have that playing in the background.
BCA commercial or something like.
Yeah, right. But I don't have that. So let's kind of post-mortem the teams that fell and did not qualify for the championships because they still had outstanding seasons regardless. And we have to start at the 4A level with Sandpoint. They traveled to Pocatello in the quarterfinal round and fell 44-23. I was surprised, not that Sandpoint lost because Pocatello is a good team, but I was surprised by the margin of victory for the Thunder.
Yeah, and I was talking to Sean Kane about this game too, and it was just shooting themselves in the foot and not able to punch it in. They couldn't capitalize, and hats off to Pokey. I mean, like, they shut that offense down and held Max Frank in check, and the Bulldogs weren't able to get their mojo going and keep the momentum rolling. I know that they're super high in the underclassmen groups that are at Sandpoint, and they felt like, if they had made it to the semifinals again this year for the fourth consecutive year, that it's like they're peaking a year early than they should because they expected to be there next year. But I mean, a great season by Sandpoint and a rally, as we've been seeing teams making quarterback changes early in the season and ended up actually paying dividends in the end for them. Sandpoint's one of those prime examples and what they were able to do. And Lehman certainly, earned his medal as far as that starter role and what he was able to do and manage games. But they dug themselves in a hole early. They just couldn't climb out. And, Pokey in that running game, and they got some athletes on the outside, just, a little bit more edge there, and we're able to bury Sandpoint in the hole.
Yeah. So for Sandpoint, they finished the year 7-4. Drew Lehman is back at quarterback next year. All the skill guys are gone though. Cody Brewster, Max Frank. Most of the linemen are back though, so that's a good foundation. And then on defense, a lot of dudes. The secondary, especially losing guys like Shane Sherrill and Graham Dunkel and Eli Allshouse.
I think Hinberg will graduate as well. So there's a lot of hope. But like I said, that younger underclass group that's coming up, though, there's some depth there. There really is.
They appear to be good in the trenches, so that's a good spot to start, certainly for Sandpoint. Okay, next 3A, Timberlake also falls in the quarterfinals. They had to, everybody's done it. They had to go play Sugar Salem. They fall in that contest. I'm trying to see what the final score was in that game.
It was better than the previous. I think it was 20. I think they scored 20 on them, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong.
Let me pull that up. I thought I had it in front of me, and so this is great podcasting right here. They fell 48-21 was the final score. Not indicative again of how they really did push Sugar Salem for a half, and then they just kind of wore out as the game went along. But Coach Kelly Amos's team finishes 6-5 this year, and they are kind of like Sandpoint. They lose some really talented guys to graduation, but they are still kind of the favorite going into the 2-team IML next year.
3-team IML next year because Moscow.
With Moscow. Yeah. That's right. And I guess I shouldn't say that. Maybe Moscow will be the favorite.
Moscow could be the favorite. You never know. I mean, it's going to be anybody's ball game next year, but obviously Timberlake got the upper hand on the Bears this year when they did play. But I mean, Timberlake, you look at the kids that they've got, like Cooper Lenz and Caius Tebby, and you go down the roster, and even on that offensive line too, they're losing some great kids that have been in that program for a long time. That were big contributors, and Cole Mattinger at quarterback. And, he set the school record for passing, career passing yardage that he was able to accomplish in the last couple of weeks as well. So, I mean, that's, you don't want to slight in a loss. I mean, you push Sugar in a quarterfinal game, and that's a team that's blown out everybody this year. And you did better than you did the previous time. There's some you can go home with some smiles on your face. But I know that some of those kids are getting college looks, which is awesome. And we're hearing like offers coming in for some of those guys, and they've earned it. And so, you look at bright spots for the season, like they had a tough schedule for 3A teams playing, some of the larger Spokane schools, and then scheduling up 4A games as well. Like that's a team that kind of anybody, anytime, any place. And, they take the lumps in the loss column, but, it pays off for efforts come in the, postseason too.
Definitely. So congratulations to Timberlake on a great season at the 2A level. Ryan, Grangeville finishes their season 4-4. They fall in the quarterfinals to another number 1 seed. This time they fall to Declo, 37-14. They do lose, a couple of impact players like Cody Clement and, like Aretta. But they do return kind of a big 4 next year with David Goikoa at quarterback, Cooper Poxleitner, who's kind of a slot back, Thane Williams, who was a great wide receiver, and then the dude, right? The guy we call a dude, Carter Munt, is back as well to anchor that defense. So Grangeville looks, pretty optimistic as well.
Yeah, we talk about teams to keep an eye on, like as you approach next year and like the returning cast that's coming back, and if they can add a man in the trench or two up front, like that's a team to keep an eye on in 2A football. It doesn't take a lot to make those cupboards full, and once you start getting a smaller high school 11-man football in Idaho, I mean, pretty much both teams are playing. All teams tend to play both ways, and if you can add a 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th player to enter that mix, and you add a few extra guys, you're going to find yourself with a lot of success. And I think Grangeville is going to they're going to be all right next year. They're going to be pretty good. I would put them as the favorite in their conference in the CIL.
Definitely. Let's move to 1A D1, where this was the most surprising result to me. Kamei falling at home to Grace 20-0 in a game that was played under pretty heavy fog, it sounds like, and of course a rain soaked field, but Grace goes up and shuts them out 20-0. And so Kamei wanted to play outside where it was rough and tumble, and they just couldn't get anything going. They finished their year 8-2. They do say goodbye to a lot of talented players. David Clute is back next year, which is a good foundational piece to start, but this is a really good senior class that's walking out the door for Kamei.
Yeah, I mean, you get kids like, I think Porter Whipple's a senior as well, and some of those other guys in those classes. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought he was a senior. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't want to graduate him too early. But you talk about pieces that have had some success for the Cubs and get deep runs into the state playoffs. That Kamei team, you look at, they had some slip ups earlier in the year. Obviously, they lost, big to Logos, who's an upstart program with a huge, deep senior laden group that, really worked hard this year. But that Kamei team, to do what they were able to do, and you get some key pieces back in 8-man football, you're 1 or 2 guys away. And so, you look at some of the teams around them and what Grace is going to graduate or what Oakley. You obviously have Kendrick coming up next year into your league. So there's no easy days off, but you can still find some success there in the White Pine League next year too.
Yeah, hit that weight room, get bigger, faster, stronger. Porter Whipple does graduate. Connor Weddle graduates. Colton O'Kane graduates. Those are 3 pretty big, significant losses for Kamei. Okay, quarterfinal postmortem. Our final one goes to 1A D2. This is a game we were both at 2 weeks ago. That was the last time I actually had a functioning voice, Ryan. Mullen St. Regis, they fall to Hagerman 54-12. It was a really fun game. Kofi Apia returns a kickoff 77 yards for a touchdown. And then Connor Lewis throws a 70-yard touchdown pass to Hunter Stola. And so Mullen St. Regis concludes their season. And we can't really say, what their future looks like because there's 3 options that are basically on the table, and we won't know for, probably at least until December, which way this co-op with St. Regis of Montana and Mullen in Idaho is going to go. But it's going to go one of 3 ways. Either the co-op will continue as it is, with St. Regis traveling over to Mullen most of the time and Mullen occasionally traveling to St. Regis. It could go the other way, where Mullen becomes the team that travels to St. Regis most of the time, and St. Regis occasionally comes over to Mullen, and that would mean they would actually compete in Montana over in the Western Sea. So Mullen would no longer be part of Idaho. They would be in a Montana league, or the schools go their separate ways. And then Mullen, no matter what happens, Mullen doesn't have enough players to field their own team. They would then go to Wallace and play with the minors just down the road. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So I just want to take time to say what an incredible 4-year run it's been for this Mullen St. Regis co-op. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you look at, if it is the swan song of what we saw of, kind of something that you don't see every day, where a team from outside the state gets to come into the state of Idaho and end up being a key piece of D2, Division 1A D2 football. They brought the program into relevance year after year that they competed here, and that you look at some of the athletes that have come through, and obviously they had some really significant injuries that hampered them for this playoff run that they had. They were kind of a mash unit closing out the season, but bright spots too of kids like Kofi Apia, who's just, you look at him as a spark plug. That kid just loves being around his teammates, and it's evident. He's a kid that we talked about. He moved here from Ghana, and barely spoke English when he started school in Mullen, and ends up being such an integral piece of that program, and the kids just rally around him. And it's funny, their coaches even talk about him, and you don't care if you don't understand him, because all you need to do is know that he's giving you a great effort. And Coach Spooner, he spoke his praises highly of just kids like Kofi Apia and the other guys that have come through. That's a group of kids that obviously you could hang your hat on as a coach. And so if that is the last group that we saw between that co-op with St. Regis and Mullen, whichever way it does go, that's something that, they made a mark in 1A D2 football in the state of Idaho. And that's what you ask of your kids. If you show up, give a great effort and let the chips fall as they may. And they took advantage of what was in front of them.
If you're asking me to predict what will happen, and I don't have any insider info or anything, my gut feeling is that the co-op will continue, but it'll be in Montana instead of Idaho, which makes sense because St. Regis has the majority of the players right now. In fact, I think the only starter that is returning that is a Mullen student is Mike Morgan, center and defensive tackle. So it's a lot of St. Regis kids. But I hope the co-op does continue, even if it's in Montana. We'll still talk about those kids. And we'll follow what they're doing. I think that's the best path forward because it's been a really fun co-op to watch. But
I still think that we see them play a lot of games here in North Idaho too. You'll see them play they'll keep the schedules with Clark Fork and Lakeside and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I think they may have, an open date or two. Both those leagues, the Idaho League and the Montana League, are pretty chock full of conference dates. So you get one or two. So I don't know. It would be interesting to see how that all gels out, though, for sure. Okay, now let's go into what happened in the state semifinals. We had 3 teams from North Idaho still carrying in the banner, Scaggs, and 2 survived and advanced. Before we get to those 2, though, let's give a semifinal postmortem to the Logos Knights, who had to travel all the way to Arco to play the Butte County Pirates. They fall 60-26. Jack Driscoll throws 4 touchdowns in his final game for Logos, 2 to Ryan Daniels, 2 to Henry Sundley. I think we tallied it up on the season. He threw 40 touchdowns and 3 picks, I think.
No, as far as statistics go, he had statistical numbers, at least from what I tabulated. He was the most prolific passer in the state of Idaho this year. And, that's really saying something. But, you look at total offense, don't quote me on this, he's in the top 5 in total offense in the state of Idaho this year as well, between passing and his rushing game as well. So, but you look at that group, and I was a believer in them early in the season. And I'm glad that they gave me some love, just pat my own back a little bit. But, from week 1, I was all on board with that group and what they're able to do. And the coaching staff did a phenomenal job with that team. Obviously 3-win seasons back to back. And then you come into this year and it's kind of you get to enter as an unknown. And we knew that they were going to be good based on some of the returning cast members that they had. I don't think people realized they were going to be as good as they were. That Butte County team that they played, that's a buzzsaw of a team. That team will push Oakley every inch in that state. I don't know who's going to win that state championship game.
They may win it. Logos could say we lost to the eventual state champs.
Yeah. Very easily. Absolutely. And so, the cool thing about that program, though, is how bought in those kids are to what's going on. And then, the community of parents and everything around it. And you get guys like, NFL players showing up at your away playoff game where River Craycraft flew in. And, the Miami Dolphin flies in to speak to the team the night before the game. And that's just awesome. Like that's a great experience for those kids. And that's a season that they will never forget the rest of their life and whatever they end up doing after high school sports. I mean, you got some kids that could realistically play probably some NAIA football that are on those rosters, maybe D2. I think Jack Driscoll realistically deserves a shot at the next level. Whether what level that's going to be, I don't know, but I think he realistically could play with anybody. There's guys that are out there that like that's a season that those kids will never forget, and they will have etched themselves in the record books at Logos High School.
Yeah, and Jack Driscoll, I think, has a couple of paths. He's an excellent baseball player, also.
Yeah.
So he could play baseball in college too. I think,
sure.
pretty easily. I'll admit I didn't see this coming from Logos. They returned a lot of guys, but they've gone 3-6 the past 2 years, and their big thing was, they've got this really cool offense and they score a lot of points, but man, they give up a lot of points sometimes too. And the defensive transformation was incredible this year. And that was the biggest key, I thought, to them being able to, compile this 9-2 season this 9-1 season that they did. Yeah. Here's the other thing is, yes, they lose Jack Driscoll to graduation, but there was only, 5 or 6 seniors on the team. All the skill guys are back, all those talented wide receivers and running backs, and most of the linemen come back as well. So really it's just plugging in the next QB. Is that going to be Baxter Covington, who was a freshman this year and was playing receiver as the season went along? Is it going to be Sensing, who was kind of the backup QB in the playoffs that we saw? I don't know, but whoever it is, they're going to have a lot of talented people around them to succeed. So I don't think Logos is going anywhere.
Yeah, and you talk about those contributing underclassmen that come in. I mean, you look at what they're able to do at the junior high level. I've heard they're very successful. I've heard, those underclassmen that are there too that aren't touching the field, they were extremely successful when they were younger. I mean, they're that's a team to be reckoned with. They're going to be in the mix for the next few years. I really do see them kind of cementing themselves as like, we're going to be a perennial, like showing up in the top 4 in the White Pine League from here on out. And I could realistically see that happening with the group of kids that are left.
Yeah. So I think so Logos, so Kendrick, of course, we talked about what a juggernaut they are, and they had been a juggernaut in the junior high ranks. Logos finally beat Kendrick this year in middle school competition, ending Kendrick's kind of big winning streak at the junior high level. So you're right. That'll be a fun rivalry over the next couple of years. And then people I've talked to in that Logos community say eventually, our school's going to grow so much that we're probably going to be an 11-man team eventually. So
yeah, I could see that. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's growing like crazy out there. So congratulations to Logos. And now let's talk about it. 2 teams from North Idaho still fighting, still alive. The Kendrick Tigers will get first crack at getting that blue trophy. They'll play on Thursday night inside the Kibbe Dome against Camas County in the 1A D2 championship. You and I will be there for that game, Ryan. It's going to be like 90% you, 10% me, but we will both be there. Kendrick beats Hagerman in the semis last week, 88-20. I mean, let me just run through the stats and then we can kind of tie cap. Ty Cap 11 of 16, 398 yards, 7 touchdowns. Sawyer Hewitt 5 carries, 148 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also had 4 touchdowns receiving. So Kep had 7 TDs. Hewitt had 7 TDs. Hunter Taylor 2 catches, 120 yards, a touchdown. Nathan Twite came back from injury, 3 catches, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns. Taylor had a pick 6 that went 50 yards. And I think we're seeing now what Kendrick would look like if they played all their guys, longer than just a half.
Yeah, we saw that Hagerman team the week before when they came up and played Mullen St. Regis, and that's a team that's got some size, they've got some talent, they've got some athletes out there in the field, and that just shows you what Kendrick is, though. I mean, like you talk about a juggernaut, I don't think you get it. That word doesn't do Kendrick justice necessarily at times. And I'm not trying to sound like too much of a homer. I'm just saying that you acknowledge greatness when you see it. And you look at this team, and this is something I don't think we've seen maybe in high school football in quite some time, a team this dominant. I mean, I would equate it to like Lapway in basketball, but even more so here because I don't see the holes like you may have seen last year in Lapway basketball where they lost to Lakeside in the state championship game. I just look at this team and it's complete top to bottom. Your offensive line, it's the best offensive line in 1A D1 and 1A D2. You look at your receiver group and your skill positions, it's the best group of skill positions. I would say 1A D1, 1A D2, and 2A. Like there's nobody like this group is so complete and the depth there and everybody's bought in. And that's just a compliment. I would look at Coach Zane Hobart. I mean, if there's big schools out there, and I don't want to say like go head hunting, but if I'm building a program from scratch and you want to get a guy that motivates his kids and gets them bought in and not just like it once they're in your program, you're talking from like junior high and junior tackle, that's the first phone call I make. Like Zane does such a phenomenal job with those kids of just motivating them and getting them bought into what they're doing. And he said, hey, you know, we may take our lumps a few years, but trust me in the process, we're going to build something here that's going to absolutely rewrite the record books at Kendrick High School. And they've done just that.
Yeah, and look at you stirring the pot on the coaching carousel already. I don't think Zane's going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. No, he's got a kid on the way. He loves Kendrick. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to say like he's gonna go take the Boise State job. Like, no, he's although you want to make a splash, no. But I just say that like he's a phenomenal coach. He is, and his staff around him does a great job as well. And he lets his assistants coach. He does a great job with motivating the kids and play calling as well. And I mean, that's just a system that's built that it's gonna reload. It's not gonna have to rebuild.
Yeah. And it's, I really hope one of these aggregators, Twitter reporters, takes this report and the sources say that Zane Hobart, is among the candidates.
I don't know any jobs that have come open and I don't see him taking any of the bigger jobs, but yeah, that's awesome.
and it's funny because obviously Zane, as a great football coach, was a great football player, but anybody that knows Zane knows that he's a baseball guy, right? He played college baseball and he originally started off as Kendrick's baseball coach, and then the football job came open and he took the position. So all the success he's had is well earned, and you're right, it's just an incredible program to watch. That said, there's one time in this kind of run of dominance as they're trying to three-peat here. It was last year in the championship against Dietrich, a team full of athletes, and Kendrick came really close to not winning that game. Dietrich basically had the ball inside Kendrick's 20 with a minute to play, and Nathan Twite, as a freshman, got an interception at the goal line. So I'm not saying it's impossible for Camas County to win. There is a chance, but tall order for the Mushers. And I encourage everybody to listen to or watch our Idaho 8-man Prepcast this week, because we had two coaches on, Lane Kirkland, who recently retired from Cary, and Stetson Spooner from Mullins St. Regis. And just to hear those two kind of like playing off each other, hypothesizing how they would try to stop Kendrick. It was really fascinating to listen to. If you want to hear two really good coaches talk about, boy, how do you stop Kendrick? You should check out the 8-man Prepcast this week. It was a lot of fun. So,
yeah, no, that and the other thing I'll throw in there too about Zane is that he's an insanely humble guy.
Yeah,
and if you talk to him, he's just salt of the earth, and that's the character. I mean, he gets that from his dad, though. And I mean, his dad. You look at accolades that his father had at University of Idaho and at CAMI. That's just built into his character and who he is, and that's infectious in the community, and they've really rallied around. And hats off to like Kendrick. I don't know if you've noticed it at road games, but man, they travel insanely well, and especially for a 1A D2 group. So like the Kiwi Dome tomorrow night is going to be absolutely raucous. There will be a ton of black and orange, and this isn't me slighting. This is North Idaho Prepcast, not statewide Prepcast, and I will be as impartial as can be on the call tomorrow. But I mean, there's a lot to be said about the community in Kendrick and Julietta and what they do rallying around that football program.
Yeah, I will say real quick in terms of communities as well, I heard nothing but praise for the Logos fans that traveled to Arco. Obviously, I wasn't there, but from what I've heard from people that were there, they said the Logos fans came in full support. They were nothing but complimentary and just cheered their team on the entire time, and were just a great fan base also. Yeah. I heard that from
rivalry. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that rivalry kicking off next year too. Like that Kendrick Logos thing, that's going to be a fun one.
Yep, for sure. So 7:00 Thursday night inside the Kibby Dome, IdahoSports.com, Ryan Scaggs and me somewhat for Kendrick and Camas County. Should be a really fun game. Okay, and then Saturday, we have got a rivalry that I think is pretty underrated in terms of they don't always play, but when they do, the matchups tend to be pretty epic. It is Highland and Coeur d'Alene for the 5A championship Saturday inside Holtz Arena on IdahoSports.com in Pocatello. Coeur d'Alene goes down to Eagle and beats the undefeated Mustangs 7-6 in the semifinal game. And this is where heart, grit, determination can sometimes carry you to a win, even when the stats aren't, because Eagle outgained Coeur d'Alene in total yards, 326 to 148. I mean, they doubled up Coeur d'Alene in yardage. And also in first downs, Eagle had 19, Coeur d'Alene had 5. But that Vikings defense, we've talked about it all year, Ryan, made the plays when they needed to, and they did just enough on offense to get out of there with the win.
You know, we talk about that Coeur d'Alene defense all year, I think since the 0-week game when they got the win against Rigby. And it's like, you know, this is a different unit. Like, this is not your typical high school Idaho 5A defense. You see defenses the good defenses we've seen on state championship teams, they've had some good guys, but they're not like crazy dominant, because you see an offense that usually backs it up. Like when you seen like Luke Flowers and guys like that at Rigby that, you know, or Zeke Martinez down at Meridian and these other guys that push these teams on offense. We've seen, I'm telling you right now, Shea Robertson is the most dominant player in high school football in the state of Idaho. And you could say Gatlin, Bear, everybody else. I don't care. I will put money on that. If we're drafting right now for high school player, I'm picking Shea Robertson. That kid is an absolute dog. And, you know, he goes in and he has 14 tackles in the state semifinal game, I think was his final stat, or he had 11 solo and 3 assists or something like that. But, you know, just to have that effort, and I don't know if you saw the clip of him stopping the goal line play where Eagle is going to try to run in, and he slices through out of nowhere and tackles the running back, you know, at the line of scrimmage for no gain to stop the touchdown that would have been the go-ahead score. Man, that Coeur d'Alene defense is crazy. And just the other guys on the backside of that, Coeur and Brown and Ivankovich. I mean, you just start going down that line, and we haven't even gotten to Camden DeGraw, who's playing at Wazoo. Like, he's signed with Wazoo to play, and you're talking about all these guys, and like that's just a collective of dudes. Like, there's a bunch of alphas on that defensive side of the ball, but they know how to rely on one another, and that's what I think sets them apart. You look at the offensive side in retrospect, like you had a quarterback change. You bring in Simmons. He's a game manager. I mean, he threw a first pick, I think, that I've seen him throw. I think he threw one against Lewiston as well. But other than that, I mean, he's like the most efficient passer in 5A football in the state of Idaho. You know, they do just enough. And with the running game, they're without their best running back. Spielman's out with the knee injury. So, okay, fine. Throw, you know, their new running back in there. And Owen Harris has done a phenomenal job as the bell cow back for the Vikings. And they haven't really missed a beat. Jamison Kazar in the passing game has made himself known. I think he's definitely cemented himself as the premier tight end there in that offense. And yeah, I look at this game, and if I have to pick a side, I mean, defense wins championships. As good as Highland is, I mean, that Coeur d'Alene defense is rare. I mean, you don't see groups like that. And so I don't know how you've picked, but I'm going to lean on the Vikings in another tight game. I mean, we could realistically see a 13-12 football game.
Yeah, I think Highland has seen a lot of good teams this year. I'm not sure they've seen a defense like Coeur d'Alene's, and you just can't simulate that in practice until you actually get there. And so it'll be fascinating to see, especially Coeur d'Alene loves shutting down the run. Highland's got a very good running back in Jackson Riddle, who busted off an 80-yard touchdown run last week. So that to me is where it's going to be won or lost. But yeah, so 7-6 win. Caden Simmons. So really the defense did their job right in the first half. Alex Brown has an interception. Jason Cady recovers a fumble. Eagle fumbles the snap to the quarterback. Jason Cady recovers. And then just like in the blink of an eye, Coeur d'Alene scores. Right away after the fumble recovery, Simmons hits Kazar for 37 yards. Owen Harris breaks off a 19-yard run to take him down to the 1. Simmons scores on a QB sneak. importantly, Katie then converts the PAT, and it's 7-0 Coeur d'Alene. We go to the second half, third quarter. Eagle finally scores, but the point after kick was partially blocked, and there's that Coeur d'Alene defense coming through big again. So it's 7-6, and that would end up being the final score, of course. On their next possession, Eagle drives again deep into Coeur d'Alene territory. They score what they think is a 7-yard touchdown pass. It gets wiped out due to an offensive lineman being downfield, so they've got to move it back. Ultimately, they have the choice. We can take the field goal and the lead, or we can go for it on 4th and goal from the 3. And Eagle decides we're going to go for it. And that was that play you alluded to where Robertson came through and stopped their all-state running back, Noah Burnham. And from there, Eagle never really got deep again. And so it was a really fun, exciting game. And this is my kind of team. I love good defense. And so, yeah, Coeur d'Alene looking good.
Yeah, and you look at it too. I mean, I don't know what Highland looks like up front on their defensive front, but I mean, if you look at Coeur d'Alene held Rocky Mountain and Eagle combined to 14 points. I mean, that's in 2 state playoff games. You just look at that, and that's like, you look at their average point. They've lowered their points per game average through the playoffs, and I think that they're now under 8 points per game average on the season. I mean, that's an insane stat line. But the one thing that I look at is that, Coeur d'Alene's offense has been kind of underrated a little bit. And they've got, 4 receivers that are over 350 yards in total yardage coming into the game. They had plus a running back that's, over 500 yards rushing. That's just, there's balance there. And so, can Highland play defense and hang to stop a couple Coeur d'Alene drives? Because we've seen them start hot. We've seen them come right out of the gate and get nice drives. And obviously they had a turnover on one of the first drives, or their first few drives in the game against Eagle. But it's going to be a great championship. I think it's going to be one of those ones, like, I'm glad that that's happening on Saturday, because that's going to kind of set itself apart. That could be the best game of the weekend, in my opinion. That's just an absolute battle. 2 historic programs that have been really good. Coeur d'Alene's last title, I think, was 2013. Highlands was last in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So 2 teams looking to get back and hang another banner. So it'll be a phenomenal game.
So Highland does have some big guys on that offensive line, and that's where I think it's going to be one is Coeur d'Alene's D-line versus Highland's O-line. For example, Austin Barlow, 6'5", 270, and a senior. Bruce Nallo, 6'2", 300, and a senior. Gage Johnson, 6'3", 320, and a senior. Ethan Snelders, 6'7", 240, and a junior. So Highland's got some big dudes up front, but can Coeur d'Alene's quickness and strength overcome that Highland size? It's going to be fascinating to see.
Well, Coeur d'Alene offensive line up front. I mean, I think they averaged 260 across the front for their own right. So, I mean, they've got size up front too. And, it's going to be kind of like the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. When those 2 teams collide on Saturday afternoon, it's going to be a dandy of a game. And I'm looking forward, and I'm super jealous of Scott Burton, who's going to have the call on that game, because he does a great job, 1, but 2, it's just, you're going to be in for a treat. Like, that's going to be an excellent ball game.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun contest for sure. And again, you can listen to every single championship game this weekend for free on IdahoSports.com. All right. Well, good luck to all of the teams competing in the championship. Hopefully I'm feeling better eventually, Ryan. My wife and I were talking, and she said, maybe we had COVID. And I said, maybe we had COVID. And she said, we live in North Idaho now. COVID doesn't exist up here.
Starting on me. I'm sure we could hear from some of our Anyways,
and honestly, I really don't care if it was COVID or not, because I'm sick. To me, classifying it is not important, because it's not life-threatening. I'm okay.
Sure.
I'm still functioning. I just can't talk. So I'm totally fine. And so looking forward to being in a car with you for a couple hours tomorrow as we drive to and from the Kibby Gnome. Maybe you should bring a mask or something.
No. Dude, you're worse than I am. No, I'm you're fine. You've exceeded all of the recommended time periods and everything else, so I'm not worried. So we're good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we hung out in the car before you got, like 2 days before you got sick anyway. So if I was going to get sick, that would have been the time to get sick. So we're good.
For sure. Okay, well, good luck to everybody still competing. Coeur d'Alene and Kendrick, we'll be back to recap that and talk girls hoops more in depth next week. But until then, you can check out our girls basketball previews on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. All right, thanks for tuning in to the North Idaho Prepcast, everybody. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney, and we will see you next time on IdahoSports.com.